Howdy again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher, and I'm sitting right next to my brand new used RICON 18-inch wood cutting bandsaw. Now my roommate and friend Lee, and I've been helping him clean his shop out, he's just selling out, but he gave this to me for helping him. I really didn't expect it, probably have no use for it. I may flip it, but it needs a little attention. I haven't run it yet. It is 220 volt single phase, so that's a little bit of a problem for a lot of people. But this is quite a powerful saw with a 2 horsepower motor, and it'll take up to about 1.25 inch blade, I believe. In fact, some people may call this a resawing type of bandsaw. So it's a big step above the deltas that we're used to. And for that matter, this is more for professional woodworkers. And I think that these run between $2,000 and $3,000. And yes, they're Chinese, just like everything else is Chinese. But remember that the Chinamen can produce goods to whatever cost you want. They could make this for $200 and you'd hate it. If they can make things for $2,000 or $3,000 that are superb. I think you all understand that. So there was footage of this as we moved it and loaded it on my trailer and all of that, and it was all lost because I think I told you recently that that is the day that my Sony Handycam quit on me after making 2,000 videos only. So you just can't depend on Sony. No, it was an excellent camera. And I'm shooting this with another vintage Sony that I bought on eBay. All right, let's get to the business at hand. You know, one of my biggest pet peeves over the years is that they don't put the blade length right here. It needs to be emblazoned bigger than the stupid word RICON. Well, I just put that on 142 inch. If you agree with me, that's the only thing that matters with bandsaw is the blade length, and they hide it. Well, it's in the manuals, of course. So do this to yours. Maybe get rid of that tag, and we just should emblaze it on there in that size. Wow, what a rant. Well, I will give them this. This is the inside of the lower cover, so you got to get on your knees to read it, but at least they did put a rather large sticker here with all of the basic information that you do need, and I believe that someplace here is the blade length as well as the various radii that you can cut with the different widths of blades. All right, enough of that, and a little information here about the cutting speeds too. Well, this is my 15-inch Craftsman metal cutting bandsaw that I've had for several years. I absolutely love this saw. I never did see it in any of their catalogs, but it's bulletproof. I paid $90 for it at a garage sale. It's almost new, but they had the good sense here to tell you the blade length right there on the front cover, as well as some other pertinent information, rather than just bragging about the brand name. So give Sears a kudos, or whatever that means, and a thumbs up on that, because generally this is the only company, I think, the only saw I have where they did that. This saw is still partially disassembled because I brought it, 25 miles on a trailer. But the first thing to do whenever you're moving a bandsaw is remove the table, because you cannot lift the saw by the table. You will damage the trunnions. And in this case, they do look a little wimpy. They're just stamped sheet metals. That's not a good thing. Matter of fact, that's the only bad thing I have seen on this saw so far in examining it. Looking at the lower wheel now, we have 2 speeds. And this is not for adjusting the speed. This is just a crank to release the belt tension so you can change the V-belt from one set of grooves to the other. And I'm sure I would run it at the lower of the 2 speeds. One thing I really like about this saw is there are 3 guards for the front, and of course they're hinged. None of that crazy delta stuff where you have to take 2 knobs off. You'd rather take a beating than change a blade. So here they're hinged and can easily be taken off. as such. Same is true with the two bottom ones. I'm not going to do that now because I want full access as I explain this saw to you. There is a gauge right here and a little window in the cover that I just took off so that as you tension the blade you can watch the yellow needle come to the correct mark there on the little gauge. Pretty awesome. I can raise and lower the guides here by unlocking, you know, there's a knob right behind here like there's on virtually all saws, and then a rack and pinion crank system here to raise and lower it, because this would be fairly heavy if it came down and hit the table. I'm hitting right here right now. There's a little interference. Something is out of adjustment from handling it, but we'll take care of that. There are a bunch of bearings here on the guides. There's two bearings here. So we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, and 10. And my buddy already had a couple spares, and I did replace this one, which was totally cut in half. But I feel some of the other ones are very rough and need replacing. In fact, I've ordered a dozen from Feebay, and they will be here soon. So I'm going to change all of the bearings. It's very easy to do. Okay, I'm around the back side now, and you can see here, this is the clamp for raising and lowering the guide and then locking it. And up here we've got a quick acting lever for reducing the tension on the wheel so that you can change blades, and then the tracking knob right here and the lock. And I'm just learning all this stuff myself. And a robust cast iron crank, a very robust cast iron crank for tensioning the blade. At first I thought there was the crank handle was missing like this, because there is a hole drilled here, but in looking through the parts list they never did put one on. I can kind of see why. It would be a two-hand operation rather than just turning a crank. Perhaps that was a little bit too harsh, because on the back side there's a nice decal with the model number and all of that, and the cutting speeds and the blade length. And here is a really neat feature. Of course everything on this machine is metric, but there are the 4 different hex keys that you would need for various adjustments. So somebody gave some thought to this. And down below is the very, very robust 2 horsepower, 220 volt single phase motor. Notice there's aluminum cooling fins on it. And another great feature, they had their thinking caps on. That's a totally enclosed motor that is cooled by the fan on the end. So it may draw sawdust right into the end, but that sawdust and trash cannot get into the windings. Listen to me, Delta and other companies who put an open frame motor on machines that produce dust. They must be smoking some of that white dust to do that. I'm going to tell you one of my major pet peeves in life, and I know that it bothers some of you as well. I'm back to the Craftsman saw. Notice the nice condition of this table, although there's a little stain right there. But I absolutely go ballistic if somebody sets a cold drink that is sweating on my cast iron table. I know some of you don't care, but you women, if there's any women watching, you know you don't want something setting on your grandma's mahogany table that you just had refinished. So absolutely do not use this as a table. But where it is located here in my shop, right inside the door, it's a natural place for somebody to come in and set something down. And my wife did that one time, and I'm not going to tell you any more about that. In order to move the machine, naturally I took off the table, as I said, and here's the fence and the fence attachment and all of that. This is extruded aluminum, pretty nice really. But look at the condition of this table. Look at the rust here. That is why I just showed you the perfect table on my my Craftsman saw. Because, well, my friend, first of all, and my brother was the same way. They actually do not have a workbench. Any flat surface in their shop becomes their workbench, such as a table saw, or in this case the bandsaw with quite a large table. So there's glue and finish and just all kinds of corruption on here, and that's all got to be taken care of. Now, it'll never look new because it would have to be surface ground for that to happen, and that is not that important to me, but I am going to spend probably a half hour off camera cleaning this up. So what do you think is the best way to clean something like this up? You know, I just bought this not too long ago. I absolutely love this. I know you're going to make fun of me, but let's just grind the heck out of this, okay? Just kidding. Did you think I had gone crazier than I already am or was? Of course we're not going to use a grinder. I have found over the years that sometimes a razor scraper will remove a good portion of what is troubling you. Can you see that? Now it's going to need some Scotch-Brite and other devices as well. Over here where we have glue and finish, you can see that's scraping up kind of nice. Now nobody wants to watch me do this. Matter of fact, I don't want to do it. I should just sell it the way it is. And by the way, it's not for sale yet. I'll let you know when it is. It might be years from now, or it might be at my estate sale as well. So anyway, I'm going to work on this off camera and not make a big deal out of it because it would be very unpleasant. And then hopefully we'll get it into changing these bearings if they come in the mail pretty soon, and reassemble it, and then actually cut some wood on it. Okay, I just wasted 45 minutes out of my, never mind, 45 minutes. I hated every second of it. I did use a scraper, followed by a 3/4 inch wide dull chisel in the miter gauge slot. I didn't get half of that. Big old chip in here from Bubba. And then finished up, if you want to call it finishing up, with this. That's as good as I'm going to make it. Now, it's strictly cosmetic anyway. As long as it's smooth, it really has no effect whatsoever on what we're doing. But we all want our machines to look great. And the rest of the machine does look so great that it's, well, the next owner can do whatever he wants, but I'm done. I think you all know that all bandsaws are tough on this blade insert that goes in here, but these are plastic, which is actually kind of a good idea, although this one's mutilated a little bit, and often as you tilt the table you damage these and things get caught in there. But anyway, glad to see that my buddy bought some extras, so there's still 2 in the package and a brand new one right there. And if these would fail, make one out of aluminum, which I have done on my other machines. I flipped the table over, and it's incredibly heavy, probably 40 pounds just for the table. But what a beautiful casting this is. Wow, I'm liking it. But there's nothing I need to do here other than tell you that here are the 4 drilled and tapped holes that will be used to fasten it onto the trunnions over there. And this is the stop right here, so that when you bring it to 0, you'll truly be on 0. And we've got some clamps over here that are used with the fence. Haven't gotten into that too much yet. And I would assume that this logo here is, well, what's the name of this thing? I just forgot. Well, since it's not an R, that's probably the name of the foundry in communist China. Well, it's 3 days later and I'm ready to change the bearings now. These bearings came in the mail today, so I bought 10 of them, and that's the outfit. Summit Collars and Industrial Supply out of Florida. Very good shipping, good price, so kudos to them, whatever that means. What does kudos mean? So there's 5 bearings in the upper guide system and 5 in the lower. Now this bearing here, you know what, that's a smaller bearing than what I ordered here. Boy. Anyway, the purpose of this bearing, pretend this is the blade, is to back up the blade, keep it from getting pushed this way. And the one that was down here on the lower level, actually, this is a new one here, but it actually was cut through to where you could see the balls. So I threw it away. I wish I had it. And I did remove this guard here that goes up into the top area, simply so you can see what I'm doing, and it's easier to change the bearings that way but probably not totally necessary. But before I put the bearings in, I'm not going to show all that. I want to talk to you a little bit about different types of ball bearings, just in case there's a few people out there that do not understand this. Rapid forward about 2 minutes if you already know this. Okay, these bearings are 6201-ZZ, and ZZ means two shields, a shield on both sides. You can buy bearings without any shield or seal on either side. These typically might be used inside of a transmission where they get plenty of lubrication. We're not trying to keep contaminants out. Here again, no, here's the double shield, as I just said. But you can also buy a double seal. See, this is rubber on both sides. It holds the lubrication in, keeps the contaminants out. Now, why don't they use them here? Because I'm going to show you something here. And you can also buy bearings with a rubber seal on one side and a shield on the other side. How do you know if your bearings are bad? Well, often you can feel it. That one's not bad, but some of these, they just feel rougher than a cob as you rotate them. This is one that I took off, and I popped the shield off, and it's totally loaded with sawdust. Can you see that? I know you can. There's even sawdust on the back side of the shield, the metal shield. These are real easy to get off. So are the rubber ones, for that matter. But the thing is, the sawdust absorbed all the oil and it's surrounding all the balls, so it's going to wear rapidly, especially in this application because it's pretty high speed. So anyway, I'm going to replace all of them with a double shielded bearing as I just showed you. And you're thinking, why don't you use a double, this is the wrong size, a double seal? Well, the double seal has so much grease in it that sometimes it doesn't spin as freely. And we want these to spin real freely when the blade comes up against them. This is the wrong size. That's a Massey Ferguson bearing. Let me pull a rubber seal off so we can see what's on the inside. Okay, here is the double sealed again, and I took the seal off on this side, and you can see they are packed with lubricant. And that seal keeps the lubricant in and the trash out. Well, that's enough on bearings. That's probably a heck of a lot more than you want to know, but it's an interesting subject if you want to study up on that. Okay, I'm going to change all the bearings, and I'm going to do it off camera because it's just an average mechanical job that should have little if no interest. Be right back. Okay, all 10 bearings have been replaced, and the bearing that was on here, which is this one, is the wrong one. I checked the parts manual and all 10 bearings should be the same. But I cannot adjust the guides at this time until I put a blade on. So you can see the back bearing can be moved in and out, and these bearings can be moved depending on the thickness of the blade. But what I really think is neat here, and maybe a lot of other companies use this, but look at the system here for adjusting the bearings. Just a round piece of 5/8 stock, no, it'd be millimeter or whatever, and slides right into place, I think, and tighten it up when the blade's in there and the blade has been tensioned. These would come up against the blade, and the blade would be positioned so the teeth would not hit any of the bearings, and that would be done by moving this bearing in or out. All right, enough about the bearings, and we'll talk maybe a little bit more about them when I put a blade in place, but there's a handful of bad bearings. It's like June 20th, and it's 95 degrees in here. I'm burning up. Well, I'm going in to eat, and as soon as I finish, I'm coming back out and put the table onto the trunnions. I may need a hand from my son-in-law because the doggone table weighs about 40 pounds. Well, I got the table on, and believe me, it was a struggle. I did it all by myself. I had a heck of a time aligning the holes, but I came out of it alive. So let's think about putting the blade on and then the covers and perhaps giving it a test run. Well, it's 2 days later and I'm ready to operate here. So I have installed the new bearings, put the blade on, and this is the blade that I'm using, 142 inches, 3/4 inch wide. The one that is on here is used. So I noticed that it's not the sharpest, but it'll get the job done. So I've also put the fence on and the guide here for the fence. I do not have a miter gauge for this, and this is the T-slot type. But when I was over at my friend's house, I did see 2 miter gauges there, so maybe one belongs. I'm going over there tomorrow. All right, let's cut some wood, but let me do a close-up here of the blade first. Also, remember that this machine is 220 volt. So it's ready to run. You may find it interesting to note that when I raise the blade guide up, there will be 12 inches. You know, you can do resawing on here, as I said. So I'm going to double check that the blade is square. I should say the table is square with the blade, and I've already made that adjustment, and it looks pretty darn good. Now, looking through the little window on the top cover, you can see that I have the blade tension at 3/4 of an inch, and it takes quite a bit of effort and muscle to get that tension with 2 hands. That's why they didn't put a crank on it. And the purpose of this little window is so that you can very quickly see if the blade is centered on the wheel, and I do not quite have it centered, and I ran out of travel right here. As you can see, I was looking through the window, but it shows up a lot better if you open up the cover. As you can see, I have both covers on. I already have a little sawdust in there, and I have the machine set for the slower of the 2 speeds, which is, I gotta look down here, 1,500 feet per minute. This is a 4x4 and it's cedar. Smells real good. I'll just cut off an inch or so here and see what happens. Fire it up, fire it up. I love this big red stop button. This is the resawing bar that goes on the fence like this, and I can tighten it down over here. Okay, now I'm going to resaw this piece of hardwood with the resaw bar. I've never done this. I have a layout line for whatever good that might be, but by using the bar, it gives a fellow a chance to steer the work and pretty much stay on center, I hope. At least that's what I did. But if you watch closely in the previous scene where I ripped the 4x4, it was drifting away from the fence on the other side of the blade, and that's why we sometimes use a resaw bar. That's walnut, by the way, and I do have a little burning there, I think. Not perfect by any means, but that's what resawing is all about, and I think that's essentially what this machine was built for, heavy-duty sawing and resawing. Really a very well-built machine, other than I do not like this plastic lever here, and there's one down below the table also to tilt the table. I don't particularly like that because sooner or later those will break, I guarantee. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video on my brand new used RICON 18-inch wood cutting bandsaw. It's a pretty awesome saw. You know, this weighs 400 pounds. It's not just one of these little lightweight things like you buy at the depot. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Remember, I have thousands of machine shop videos. And by the way, today is the middle of June 2025, and this will be for sale, you know, within the next few months or so here, but do not give me an email or a comment if it's much after today's date. Anyway, good talking to you, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.